Welcome. Welcome, everybody, back to STEM in the Gap, where we attempt to close the gap between the majority and the minority in STEM fields. Today, we have a special guest episode. I'm here with Dr. Awad Abdelhalim. He is the Assistant Director of Research at the MIT Transit Lab and JTL Urban Mobility Lab. And we're so glad to have him here to be able to talk about his experiences and kind of show you guys what a career in STEM looks like through his example. So I just, Dr. Abdulhalim, if you could give us a little introduction to the audience about yourself.
Sure thing. Yeah, and thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me, Gavin. You can just call me Awad. That's
Okay, Awad.
pretty
Okay.
nice. Makes it easier for you than going through my
Mhm,
alphabet soup last name. So yeah, as Gavin kindly introduced me, I'm the assistant director of research with Transit Lab and Urban Mobility Lab at MIT. I'm originally from Sudan. I grew up in Sudan in Khartoum. That's where I lived most of my life. That's where I did my bachelor's degree, civil engineering. It was the one program I applied to. Really, I can talk about that in extent because I really wanted to go to civil engineering and build things and
mhm.
drive by them and tell people, look, I built that.
Yeah.
I moved to the States in 2016
Mhm,
for grad school. So I did my master's and my doctorate eventually at Virginia Tech. Great place in
mhm.
Blacksburg, Virginia. Amazing, amazing people, amazing college football. If you're into that, beats Boston College pretty much every year in the ACC. So it's great. I went to a few beast like games at Boston College since
Mhm,
moving to Boston, and I've always been the noisy away supporter in the home end.
mhm.
So yeah, currently I essentially the work that I lead is on applying urban computing and emerging technologies and advanced artificial intelligence methods to improving mobility systems with a particular focus on public transportation systems.
Okay, nice. Thank you for giving us a little background. If maybe you could go a little bit into your upbringing, your teenage years, kind of the culture you came up with in in Sudan. Just give us a little detail on that, how that contributed to where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely love my city. I love Khartoum. So there was a part, I think maybe 6 years between second grade and eighth grade, where I was abroad. I was in Saudi with my parents work there. They're expats. They're
Mhm,
both medical doctors who work in Saudi Arabia. So there was 6 years, kind of like my early childhood and like early teenage years where I was there, attending school there. I attended an international school, so it was kind of like a melting pot of people from all around the world who had families also who worked in Saudi Arabia, and it was
mhm,
amazing. I mean, it genuinely gave me like a really cool perspective of like just going to school for 6 years with people from literally every corner of the world.
yeah.
So that genuinely, that was it. That was like, those were my people. Those were the friends I hung out with after school. Played a lot of
Mhm,
soccer, love soccer, still do. Um,
nice.
yeah. I went back to Sudan for the end of my for high school. So high
Mhm,
school there 3 years. I did 2 years there essentially. So that was a little bit. Initially, it wasn't like the most comfortable transition. Like you go back to your home country, but if you're there and you have missed being there from like being 7 to being 15 years old, that's a big chunk of time.
yeah.
13, 14. So in a sense, initially I was like, oh my god, this country is great, but like I don't understand my own country because I'd spent a lot of my childhood away.
Yeah.
So high school was kind of an adjustment period. It was kind of also like getting to know. I did go like visit like quite frequently with my parents when we were abroad.
Mhm,
Um, but that was really kind of like me getting to know my country better. I love that part, honestly. Spending
mhm,
high school there was great. Made a lot of friends who I'm still really good friends with until today. um, got to know the city, got to really, be prepared for going to college there. Like if I went to my undergrad there, which I feel
mhm.
like in the States is quite common that people go to college very far away from home, which I find very intimidating. I mean, it's like in the confines of geography, it's still one country, but it's
Yeah.
massive, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. That's true.
so I genuinely feel like that part of like doing high school in my hometown, and then kind of like absorbing the culture again, getting
Mhm,
getting situated well. prepared me to have a really good time in my undergrad in college. Because then at that point, I really knew this. Then I was integrated into it.
Okay, nice. Yeah, seems like you had a. I know my dad personally, he grew up in Jamaica and he also went to a school with a lot of different people from all over the world. And he said, you know, it really contributed to his development as a person to be able to see these different people and grow up with those different perspectives. It's definitely something that is really important.
Yeah, yeah. I
Just to
feel like
yeah.
like just on that note, because I feel like this is kind of like for me, like when I moved to the States, I have cousins and family who grew up here in the States. So
Mhm.
when I compare with them, like I find that, I mean, it is kind of a special opportunity and privilege to be able to like go to like a school with that kind of kind of like a melting pot. I mean, if you think about it, in the States, people do come from all over the world, but the vast
Right.
majority of them are American or looking to be American. That's not the
Right.
same situation as when you have people who know that they are in a place temporarily and they're kind of there to share that culture that they came from and they're going back to, right?
Right.
But here, when I talk to my cousins, for example, I feel like most people who did not move to different cities or different states within the U.S.
Mhm.
end up kind of like going and meeting the same people throughout school. I'm not sure if that was your experience. Like they go to the same, like primary school. They go to the
Yeah.
same middle school. Maybe there's like three primary schools, two middle schools, and then everyone goes to the same high school.
Mhm.
Was that your experience?
Yeah, mainly for me, I mean, I went to a school in a city, but for the most part, that's what it is. You know, you have elementary schools, they kind of funnel into the middle school and then one high school, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely. Yeah, and kind of obviously you came up with all these different perspectives and had a seemingly robust childhood, in my opinion. What kind of made you center on, you know, transportation and civil engineering as you went to college and as you pursued your degrees?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point in life, I wanted to be maybe a medical doctor. But honestly, when
Mhm.
you grow up like in that part of the world, um, and you're a good achieving student, which I thankfully was like during my school years, people would always, you would be raised kind of like with this intention of you're either gonna become a medical doctor,
Mhm.
or you're gonna become an engineer, or maybe a
Right.
lawyer. Like those are kind of like the career path that you aspire to, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of just becomes a self-reinforcing thing in your head.
Mhm.
Both my parents were medical doctors, so I
Mhm.
genuinely thought I wanted to do what they're doing when I was like a child. And then as
Yeah.
I grew up a little bit, I'm like, oh, this is a lot of work. Like
This just wasn't for
that's
you.
not for
Yeah.
me. And it's also, I mean, not just that it's a lot of work, but it's also like a lot of work with people. My mother is a pediatrician, so she worked with like newborn babies. My dad's a
Mhm.
cardiologist, so
Yeah.
people who are like about to die. So they're dealing with people at different stages in life, and it's very stressful. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know about that. I love biology, but I definitely love math and physics quite a bit. Like just being
Mhm.
able to make sense of the world and like numbers and models and equations and being able to like expect what's gonna happen most of the
Mhm.
time and kind of like build things based on that. That genuinely, I love that. And I
Right.
love building things. Like I was the kid who would, tear down the toys and then build them up again, like the stereotypical kid. I genuinely enjoyed the part of like breaking every new toy I get,
Yeah.
all the remote, like the RC cars and everything, and then just building them up. It was just general curiosity to me.
Mhm.
I loved computers too. I loved computers. I coded pretty much like since early childhood, just for fun.
Wow.
Um, but kind of programming was not really, or like anything about computer science was not like a viable career path, like in Sudan or like anywhere around it as I was growing up. So
Yeah.
building things and thinking about a career after you graduate college was very important. So
Mhm.
for me, I was like, okay, I want to do engineering. There's a lot of engineering you can do, but I genuinely love like building physical things. So civil engineering
Right.
was for me. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
applied like when you apply to college back home, you apply to like I think at that point it was you apply up to like 45 programs. I applied to two civil engineering programs like at the two universities I wanted to go to.
Wow.
And I did get some stick from my family when they heard that that's the only thing I applied to because it's kind of like a one shot, you apply or you get in or you don't.
Yeah.
And in my head it was if I don't study the thing I want to study in college, then why am I going to college? Which was very naive of me. but also thankfully it worked. I should have given myself a plan B, but
Yeah.
thankfully plan A worked.
I mean, it worked out, but it is admirable the way that you were like, this is, I know I want to do this, and you just kind of push through it. Obviously, it may not have been the smartest decision to only apply to two, but I think that just kind of shows, your early ambition and kind of pushing towards the passion that you have. And that's something we try to tell our audiences, in STEM and getting involved in it, pushing towards your goals, even in seemingly things. Oh, I should apply to this, or I should have a back. I mean, you should. It's not to say that it's bad to have a backup plan, but definitely just
Exactly.
going all in on what you want to do is definitely important.
Great.
And obviously, you went to school in Sudan, and then right after that, you went to the U.S. for your graduate studies.
Mhm.
I'm sure, obviously two different countries. What were some of the adjustments you had to make? Was it culture shock? Were those types of things? What adjustments you had to make? What was the transition like?
I mean, it's. I always get this question, and I genuinely struggle to like think about like a part where I had a culture shock per se. I think
Hmm.
because for me, I went to like graduate school in a very small college town in the middle of nowhere, Southwest Virginia.
Hmm.
Virginia Tech has a beautiful campus that's like, you're like 4 hours away from DC. You're two
Hmm.
hours and a half away from Charlotte. Those are like the two big cities. Richmond, Virginia is also like 2.5 hours away.
Right.
So I think that the setup in terms of I went to like this college town where pretty
Hmm.
much everyone, even people who were from Virginia, were very far away from home. you
Right.
know so in a sense, going back to like my elementary school and middle school, the kind of international school that I went to, it was a very familiar setting. Like everyone was coming from everywhere, especially in grad
Hmm.
school. You get a lot of international students as well.
Right.
So I felt like that to me felt like just going back to my school. I genuinely did not feel like a massive culture shock. Definitely a college town in itself was a culture shock.
Hmm.
Like being in this isolated bubble from city, and everyone either goes to the university or works in some capacity connected to university, was like pretty cool, honestly.
Hmm.
I genuinely love that. I think if I went to graduate school or moved to the US straight to a big city, straight to Boston, to New York, to somewhere in California, the
Right.
big cities, I
Right.
probably would have had that shock.
Hmm.
But I felt it was smooth. Yeah, I felt like the one shock, like really positive shock that I liked, was just how incredibly accessible the outdoors were in Virginia. Like there's those great
Hmm.
outdoors and well maintained trails and things like that. I feel like where I come from, there's a lot of great outdoors, but
Hmm.
it's kind of like up to you to go and like figure them out.
Hmm.
So shout out to the National Park Services. I think they do an amazing job.
Yeah. Definitely. Um, Obviously, considering it seems that those perspectives obviously help you today, but then even in your adjustment to the US, it seems that it helped you because you were in yet another melting pot of different people and different perspectives in graduate school. So that's definitely something important to do. Um, and obviously you were able to get your PhD in graduate school, and that kind of led you to your current job at MIT. Could you tell us a little bit about that, specifically kind of the day-to-day challenges that you face with the work that you do, if you want to get into the work that you do first, and then kind of some of the challenges?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, with that, so out of my PhD, I wanted to work like in industry for couple years before like going into like a professor position at the university. I did not want to go directly into a professor position without
Mm-hmm.
getting like practical experience in the field that I studied very thoroughly from an academic perspective. But
Mm-hmm.
there was one opening that was like at this lab that I work with for a postdoctoral researcher. I
Mm-hmm.
applied to that. Um, got interviewed for it. They were interested that again the lab like does a lot of work with public transit systems mostly. I mean other forms of mobility too, but really a big focus on public transit system and how we can improve them. Whether it's like this, the scheduling or how you do the operations or how you analyze, riders' experiences, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were interested in kind of like someone with a background in applied, computation and urban computing. So kind of someone who can take video data, which was kind of like just there for security reasons, and be able to teach machines how to use it to make logical decisions after that. So I started working there in the fall of 2021 um, as a postdoctoral researcher, and then as a research associate, and then now as the research director, the assistant director for research with the lab. So
Hmm.
it's been great. We like the day to day to your question. We have a very interesting kind of structure. So we're urban mobility lab, transit lab, and also like a broader umbrella organization called MIT Mobility Initiative. Those
Hmm.
are all like directed by our lab's director, Professor Jinhua Zhao, who's a phenomenal person, a great person to work with, like incredible scholar to learn from, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, we're say about like the core group is say 8 senior researchers, so professors and research scientists and associates, and postdoctoral researchers, and anywhere from like 20 to 30 graduate students.
Hmm.
So relatively like a reasonably big group, and most of our research comes from direct funding from public transport agencies. So we
Right.
have long, you know, research partnership with transit agencies in the US. We work with like, DC's system. We work with the CTA in Chicago. We
Hmm.
work with a bunch of other agencies. We've done some work with the MBTA before here in Boston.
Hmm.
Internationally, we work with Transport for London, with Singapore, Hong Kong,
Wow.
Tokyo, Madrid, you name it. And
Wow.
and the structure is pretty cool because it's not just that we do like the research and the academic research and then write about new methodologies or algorithms and publish the research and talk to other nerds. But actually, because of the structure that we have, we do that research and then we have to like find a way to apply it with those like funding agencies.
Right.
So that's been really really great, really rewarding. And for someone like me who likes building things, even now that I've completely moved to like the computational side of
Hmm.
building things. I build code bases, not warehouses anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but still being able to take that and apply it in real life and see it improve public transport service is something that I genuinely enjoy.
Hmm. Nice. Definitely. That's really I definitely like the aspect of you're not just writing up a paper and just kind of sharing with others. It's having real world application. It's
Yeah.
affecting us and the trains that we take and how our cities are organized and how different transportation systems are planned. I think that's definitely something that is can be an issue in certain areas of science. People just write a paper up and not actually, do anything to change it. And I think you doing that is definitely um a big thing. And kind of trans with keeping with the theme of change, I just want to ask kind of as a, kind of big picture thing, what is like a change that you aim to make in global transportation or an advancement? Like what is something that you see impact in the world or something that you want to change or introduce?
I mean, I think in like when I was doing my PhD, like my focus was strictly on safety. My
Mm-hmm.
focus was on how can we use like roadside sensors. Like there is this thing in transportation and traffic engineering where you build simulation models of the real world. Okay, so you
Mm-hmm.
build like in like specialized software or you write up your own code. You build this digital representation of the world. Okay, say
Mm-hmm.
of a city, and you want to see like literally if you time the traffic lights differently,
Mm-hmm.
how does that impact the way people drive around the city? Like people took those things for granted because those are everyday things, but there's a lot of science that goes behind them. Even like
Mm-hmm.
timing traffic signals, which is shocking to a lot of people. You know, like,
Yeah.
but one thing is like when you think about it, if you go on the road, different people drive differently, do different things. Some people run a yellow light, some people run a red light even. Some
Mm-hmm.
people would like stop as soon as it turns yellow, even if it's safer for them to clear the intersection than like hit the brakes real hard. So
Right.
kind of like modeling that the way that humans drive in those simulated environments is very hard.
Right.
So when I was doing my PhD, that was kind of like my thing into using like computer vision and roadside sensors. It's like, okay, modeling people's behavior is really hard, but if we let a computer like look at how people drive and mathematically model that automatically to the simulation model, and we take the guesswork rather than like say that, well, everyone drives the same, and now let's see how they react to those changes in the environment or like the signal timing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's something that I genuinely wanted to do and make like a bigger impact, kind of making easy and accessible. People in different parts of the world, in different cities, even within the same country, would drive differently, and representing that make sure that when you make those interventions, you're making them suited to that population.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done some work in that. I genuinely enjoyed the safety aspect. But now with the focus like on public transportation, I think it's making public transportation as reliable, accessible, and comfortable as it could be. And that's very challenging
Right.
everywhere in the world. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in many places here in the States, um, public transport agencies are incredibly underfunded. So they're
Mm-hmm.
really trying to kind of like any minor adjustments that you make that give some good return on like either service or like customer interaction or any aspect genuinely of the operations does go like a really long way.
Mm-hmm.
Public transportation systems too also tend up in in the U.S. particularly, it's overwhelmingly skewed to like low income people rely on public transportation. In many parts of the world, you take public transportation just because it's there and it's better than driving.
Mm-hmm.
In the States, it also is kind of like it is like a doorway to opportunity. So really giving more people opportunities through public transit is something that I think is a great purpose to work to improve.
Yeah, I think that's a great goal to have. I think obviously safety is something that's no priority, lives being protected and being held close and held and protected, I think is definitely something that needs to be addressed. And I think it's really good that that's something that you want to focus your research towards and something that you want to make an impact on the world. Obviously, you already are having, you said, Tokyo and all across the US, you're in London, you're having all these big impacts on these places. And I think that's definitely something that can be looked up to and is something that is really admirable. So, yeah. And I just kind of want to transition now towards kind of the workplace and, in your field, obviously, talk a little bit about the representation of minorities in that field, what it's kind of like, in your workplace at MIT. Is it, because obviously you grew up in a lot of melting pots of different cultures and races, I'm sure. What's that kind of like today in your workplace, in your field?
Yeah, I think like kind of growing up, except for like the part where I went to school, like high school and undergrad in my hometown. For
Hmm.
me, every other part, like when I was first in like abroad with my parents, and then when I did my graduate school, I feel like by design, by being away from home, I was comfortable with the fact that I'm the one person that looks like me in the room. And
Hmm.
I think it's not a good thing to like it's not a good thing to get accustomed to. Like I feel like that was it when I was like in my school that I went to abroad. It was great. I loved it, and a lot of people look different. So like there, it doesn't feel registered much.
Hmm.
Same thing when you do and come from like graduate school and where I work as well at MIT now. You look around you and there's not a lot of people that look like you. That's
Right.
that's that's
Right.
quite unfortunate. Um, I feel like seeing it from like being very young, from a really young age, kind of like I grew up desensitized to it. It's like almost like, well,
Hmm.
I'm here, and usually there's not a lot of people that look like me, and I wouldn't say I don't notice it. I certainly do, but
Hmm.
you just grow up kind of like desensitized to it, and
Right.
that's I don't think that's a good thing either. I think like you should be aware. Like I remember um maybe last year. We had like there was this. I go to conferences, see very few people, whether it's like people from minorities in general or Black people particular, whether they're American or they're African who immigrated here.
Hmm.
Um, I think I genuinely the one time I saw someone speak on a podium in one of those conferences. Incredibly accomplished and amazing, like African American man who
Hmm.
was in a very senior role with the Department of Transportation. He gave an amazing lecture,
Hmm.
and at some point of it, I look and I'm like, wow, that's like this is really cool to see someone who I can kind of mirror myself into the future. Because I don't think there's a lot of opportunities to see that. To your point when you mentioned like the purpose of the podcast,
Right.
so definitely I think there's a lot of work to be done there. when I was at Virginia Tech, I worked like with there's a center for the enhancement of engineering diversity that
Hmm.
had kind of like a very particular mission of like recruiting a lot of people from underrepresented backgrounds into Virginia Tech's engineering school.
Hmm.
And we went to like quite a lot of like college fairs and stuff around like Virginia, particularly just the state.
Right.
And it feels like it for many kids that I talk to from those backgrounds, it's like it's that like is this even for me?
Hmm.
I don't see enough people like me in this career. So it
Yep.
does become kind of like a self-reinforcing cycle because a lot of incredibly intelligent and talented people, um, who did not have that, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate kind of childhood circumstance that I had when I was literally growing up, getting used to being the one person that looked like myself there and just
Right.
being used to it, right? It's very different than when it's that's not how you grew up and you suddenly are like, I'm going to college now and I'm looking at all those admissions pages or I go to visit the college campuses and
Hmm.
I don't see a lot of people that look like me, particularly in particular colleges or particular majors. It is quite problematic. I'm curious what your thoughts on it are.
Yeah, this is definitely a problem we've talked about in the past episodes with, people who, because there are so many minorities who are smart and are very capable of getting into these advanced positions and changing the world in these ways. But as you stated, they don't see people who look like them. And it's kind of like a little daunting, like they don't feel ready for it. They don't feel like it's something for them. They're like, oh, maybe this isn't for me and I shouldn't. And that's part of what we're doing on the podcast. We're bringing people like you and others on to show that there are people who came up and were able to make a change despite being a minority, not letting that stop. Obviously you didn't let that stop you in any way. As you said, you become desensitized to it, which obviously has its pros and cons, but you're able to just keep on pushing even with not seeing as many people like you. And I think that's something that we need to bring to light, in that people shouldn't become daunted from lower representation. Just think of it as you're going into your career, you're pursuing what you want to do, regardless of race or whatever. You just push the boundaries and keep going with that. So I think that's definitely something that can be taken away from our podcast, and that's kind of part of our primary goals. And just to wrap up here, kind of because this podcast is mainly directed towards youth, what's kind of a quick message that you have to young minorities who want to break that mold, who want to be innovators, who feel that the odds are against them, and to encourage them to keep on pushing?
I genuinely think like if you have a chance, because not a lot of people have chances to like look for any. There's a lot of mentorship programs like Big Brother. I think Little Brother is one in Boston, or something of that sort. Like if you get a chance to connect with someone
Mhm.
that can give you like an idea of what it's like to be in this particular field that you want to pursue,
Right.
um, try to pursue that. Like I feel like also sometimes it's a little like daunting for people to go and like
Mhm.
ask for help. Like if I'm putting myself in kind of like high school me, I'm like a sophomore or a junior in high school. I know I want to apply to college. There are all those programs that can help me say connect to people like me or people who are in those places that I want to go to and ask them about what does it take for me to do this, or you know how would I feel like I really want to do this and I want to feel like I belong there. You should ask. I think not being kind of shy or afraid to ask for help is
Mhm.
definitely one thing that I wish I did more of when I was younger, and I still try to learn to do more of now. Worst case scenario, you're in the same place you started if someone says no, right?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
so definitely taking like time to look for those spaces where you can find people who can be mentors. I think that's very helpful. I don't think you have. I genuinely like don't think I have like a particular like role model or idol. Like I don't idolize things in general. But I feel
Mhm.
like a mentor or someone that can be kind of someone that holds your hand is very different. You don't have to put them on a pedestal. Just be able to learn from the right and the wrong thing that they have done. To your point about kind of looking at places where you don't see people like you,
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that comes with it is that if you do get to those places, people tend to think of you de facto as like the representative of
Mm-hmm.
of your people, which is also like a lot of additional pressure that no one should have to deal with, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So definitely, I think it's not like I would say it's very naive to say like you should not be mentally ready for it. You have to be mentally ready for it. Like if you really want to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like there is a little bit part of like unfairness in the situation that you're being thrown into that you have to be comfortable with dealing
Mm-hmm.
with being like, okay, I genuinely want to do this, and I don't owe it like to prove to anyone that I belong in that space. I'm doing it strictly for myself.
Right.
I'm doing it because I want to do this. This is my goal. This is where I see myself at. If you find like support for that, for like mentorship or through people. I mean, like now we're having this conversation. We are in the same city, but we didn't need to be in the same
Mm-hmm.
city. Like I feel like there's so much of those virtual spaces where people get that too, that kind of like connection and mentorship.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, but I genuinely think yeah, be comfortable a little bit with not being comfortable, and kind of know that if this is what you really want and it will make you happy once you get there, then you should continue on pursuing it and not get intimidated by some illusion of a barrier that's there. There are some barriers that are not illusionary at all. Right? Like there are some barriers in access to education that gets you to particular places. There are
Right.
barriers in finances and what you can do and what you can't do, whether you go to college or after that. So there are some barriers that you cannot just try to mentally get over.
Mm-hmm.
But just the barrier of not having someone look like you, I feel like we're definitely a long way from having enough people that look like you, for people to wait for that to happen. And I think should aim
Mm-hmm.
to kind of be one of the people who makes that happen instead of waiting for it.
Right. That's definitely so true. So true. I think that's something really important for today's youth to hear, to be able to be inspired to keep pushing. Doesn't matter the barriers, you jump over the hurdles and you kind of push towards your goal. And I think that's something we've been able to resonate in this video and through our podcast. I
And I
want
think to your point on that one, just quickly, like I feel like it does not take away the acknowledgement that the barriers and the hurdles shouldn't be there.
to, right,
Like
right, right.
someone made this mess and now I have to deal with it.
Hmm.
That does not mean that it's okay for the mess to be there.
Right.
But also like pretending that it's not there is also not going to help anyone, right?
Hmm.
So I think like kind of like realizing the inherent kind of like unfairness in it, that you have to jump over hurdles where other people might not have to jump over hurdles, they can just walk over them. Like that is also something that might cause some resentment to some people, but also that does not help a lot. But
Right.
just acknowledging them, it's like, okay, this is not a great situation, but I'll make the best of it I can, I think is a good mentality to have, if one can have it.
Right. That's definitely the truth. I think obviously these bears need to be recognized and then people be told, but you can jump over them, right? You can make it through, you can push through them. They are there, but don't be discouraged. Keep pushing and keep fighting towards what you want to do.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think we've reached the end of our interview. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdelhalim, for talking with me. I think it's definitely been a really insightful conversation that I've been able to have with you. To all of you watching at home, make sure you follow us on Instagram. If what we are on YouTube, Spotify, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, all of that. We appreciate all the love and support. It's what keeps us going, makes these videos possible. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Dr. Abdul thank you so much for coming and being able to speak with me on this.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Gavin. This was great. And again, like I think this is amazing that you're doing this. I got to meet you through another event,
Hmm.
for high school students that, or yeah, I think even it included younger than high schoolers.
Hmm.
Um, the Teen Science Cafe,
Right.
which is also amazing. So I genuinely applaud you for the work that you do for your community,
Hmm.
and for all the people that you want to support. I think this is great, and happy to have been here to chat with you about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.
All right, take care.